So this got me thinking, you know, um, if it pays nowadays to be a hard worker, you know, and I would I would argue that in general it doesn't really pay to be a hard worker. Um, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, right? Um, you see, maybe you're like me. I was raised in the extremely traditional classic way, which is, you gotta be hardworking, you gotta be respectable, you gotta involve yourself and show that you are dedicated and diligent. Don't be a slacker, basically, right? And maybe you were raised the same way. And let me tell you, when I was young, up to my early 20s, I was extremely hardworking, punctual. I wasn't a slacker at all, because it was my education, basically. And unfortunately, I was too naive, and I assumed that, because I am this way, then I will be, recognized, rewarded, as it should be, as it should be. A young person that just gives, 110%, I think that person should be rewarded accordingly for the effort and the energy, in exchange. So I thought, that this fallacy was true, because I wasn't presented with the alternative, and I was just too dumb to think critically and see what was right in front of me. I refused to see, what this society has become. Okay? Back in the day, it was expected of you to be a hard worker, etc., etc., but, this was generally respected. It was the way to be. You were a nobody if you weren't, diligent and so forth. But in my case, I really put effort until my early 20s, when I realized that hard work is just nowadays it's just worthless. It's worthless, useless. Okay, now this, and I'm gonna have to put in this disclaimer. Hard work, being a hard worker for your purposes, your personal purposes, this hasn't been taught. Okay, being somebody that works for your own happiness, for your own, I guess, to earn your own money, your own business, whatever, for your interests and your interests alone, I think that is okay, and that is, it's worth it. Okay, but otherwise, I mean, if you have a dead-end job, if you work for somebody else, being an extreme hard worker, diligent as all can be, it's just not worth it. And I think this was my problem. I wasn't taught to be a hard worker for my own interests, right? I think that even today it is considered selfish, or self-absorbed to work for your own ends, for your own means, right? So after a lifetime of being this, rabid, hard worker, I didn't slack off. I just chipped in every chance I got. I didn't like to be labeled a slacker, a lazy son of a bitch. And I wasn't a lazy son of a bitch. I wasn't a slacker. But, when I woke up, I looked around, and the question was, what did I have to show for it? Okay? This was the question, and the answer was I really didn't have anything to show for it. You know? Because I just chipped in for free most of the time, I had nothing to show for it. And, I realized that generally, being a hard worker, always being active, dynamic, proactive, always being occupied with something, preoccupied with something, it was a waste of time. A lot of years spent just doing stuff for nothing because, you have to be respectable and you have to help those around you. And, that's a good thing in of itself. But goddamn, at the end of the day, you have to have something to show for it, right? And I have to repeat myself, like, I don't know, if you're an employer, a boss of some kind, and you see that one of your employees is just going to the extremes to produce quality, etc., diligent. I mean, I think that mofo deserves a raise or something, right? Right? Something. So being a hard worker, I mean, it's fine if you want to be this way. Everybody is entitled to live his or her own life the way you want it. But in my case, bro, this is just my opinion, my perspective. Like, when I saw people, relatives or neighbors or even strangers in need, or if they were working on something, I chipped in, I always wanted to help people. And now that I think about it, it was the good thing to do, the humane thing to do, but it was just such a waste of time for me personally, because I could have done something for me. It's not good to be so altruistic all the time. And my altruism was because of naivete. I was too immature to see that maybe some people were just exploiting me. Okay? And I think this was my problem, that I wasn't taught that you should expect something for your input, for your hard work, for your energy spent, for the effort. It wasn't taught to me, right? It was almost like a quintessential, like, quality to have, a principle, a standard of living, right? And I thought that this was the way to be an extreme hard worker. You get your first job, you're hired, and you just wanna prove to everybody that you are, somebody that is reliable. People, your colleagues can depend on you, and even you can produce profit beyond the quota that is expected of you. And that's how I was. And, I wanted to prove that I was somebody to be relied upon, that I was a good investment, right? And I did my share, I was really diligent, and it was a fucking waste of time, bro. If the people that you work for don't appreciate your effort and your extra effort, going beyond the mile, if they don't appreciate it, and if you don't have anything to show for it, it's a waste of time. You are squandering your potential, right? And I was young, naive, dumb, gullible, and I didn't know, and I wasn't taught to be more observant and to think critically. So I wasted a good chunk of time being this workaholic, this diligent, hard worker for nothing, right? And I always say, either be a hard worker when your efforts are recognized and rewarded, then yeah, you gotta be the best that you can be, better than anybody. in this competition. Or if not, you should work your hardest for yourself, for your interests. Do your job. If you have a lame ass job like everybody else, do your fucking job, get your money, and then when you have free time, work the hardest for your own interests, right? Because unfortunately, there is a high chance that you will be taken advantage of, that your diligence will be exploited, okay? So in conclusion, it doesn't really pay off to be a hard worker nowadays, especially with the new generation, these Zoomers. I don't think that they are taught, to be punctual, to be diligent, to be so that people can rely on you. And I don't think this is taught. I think us in the 90s, we were the last generation that it was expected of us to be the best that we can be. So it was expected of us to be hard workers. I don't think that is taught today to the younger generation, right? And if you talk to them, to younger people about this, that it should be expected of them to be better, to be a bit more involved, etc., to go the extra mile. I think that they will laugh at you and call you a boomer or whatever, right? So, in conclusion, it doesn't pay to be a hard worker if you aren't rewarded, if your achievements aren't recognized, right? So let's say you work in a company or in an assembly line, and a certain quota is expected of you, right? And you, unlike everybody else, not only meet this quota, but you double it. Instead of working just 8 hours, you work 10 and 12, depending on the day. You put in the extra effort, and your supervisor or your boss, let's just say, doesn't recognize this one bit, and you get the same ass salary as everybody else. Maybe you'll get $5 extra, right? It's not worth it, folks. Find a job, find an employment that will recognize your abilities, your competence, and who will recompense you accordingly. This is what young people need to be taught, the proper education, right? Because listen, when I got my first job, when I finished high school, it was just like, get a job, bro. Just get any job, bro. And I think this is a disease that is malign, and it is taught, generation after generation, like parents just one day snap and just say, yo, bro, just get a job to their kids. And they're not telling their kids that they need to pick a job that is rewarding and especially financially, financially beneficial, right? When, in my case, it was just one day I was told, get a job. And when I got a job, it was all right. It was fine and dandy. It's not, folks. Young people, okay, you have potential, you have competence and capabilities, you have qualities, right? And traits and faculties. Okay, find a job that will recognize and reward, your extra effort and your competence. Don't just pick any lame ass job because you get, $5 above minimum wage. Okay. And this is, of course, a lot of this, the parents are at fault. They are to be blamed because, I think this is common, right? This is common in, I'm generalizing, but I think it is common that in most households, you know, parents get a bit anxious when they realize that their kids will graduate school, and they're like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to keep on paying for this asshole, this kid of mine. So they're like, yo, get a job, you know, get a job, go to college, or just get a job, and maybe even get two jobs. I think this is what happens with a lot of parents. All of a sudden they realize that their kids are gonna graduate, and they get scared because they have to keep on paying for the groceries of their kid, right? So they go crazy, and they tell them, get a job. Fast food, McDonald's, it doesn't matter. Get a job, bro. Get a job, right? And it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame, right? It's a damn shame, because the education is only half done. Half done, okay? What I mean by this is some kids are taught you gotta be punctual, you gotta be respectable, you gotta respect people, you gotta speak when you're spoken to, of course, mind your manners, etc., and be a hard worker. Involve yourself. Prove to your supervisors that you are worth it, that you are, reliable, etc. But what they're not taught, which is the second half of the education, they're not educated to pursue an employment that will acknowledge and recompense their competence and capabilities. This is what happens. Just get a job, bro. Shut up and get a job, right? This is what happens in most families, right? I mean, it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame, right? It's a damn shame, because I was not taught to value what I have to offer. Just be a hard worker. Just be diligent, right? For what? For nothing. For nothing. I believe in the alchemical equal exchange. What you give is what you receive. If you give extra, then you should receive extra. Equal exchange, a balance, right? And now people are we have reached such a state of imbecility, of absurdism, of surreal, where people have to get two jobs, 16 hours, right? Two jobs. They have to get two jobs and a part-time job to pay rent, to manage, groceries, bro, to pay the gas bill. And prices keep on skyrocketing because of something happening in East Europe, right? So this is the state of affairs today. People are working constantly, and they still are poor, in my view, because you have to work two jobs, or sometimes even a part-time job, to manage, just to be above bankruptcy. Two jobs to be above bankruptcy. This is insane to me. Okay? Insane to me. And people, they haven't been taught to have standards, right? To have standards. Okay? So this will be the end of it. What I would suggest is, be someone that society cannot do without. Your skill set should be something that is, that cannot be disposed of, right? That your skill set should not be replaceable or expendable, right? This is how you can make it, right? And your works should be pure excellence, right? Whatever field, people will always need electricians, engineers, architects, designers, people who know how to build shit, people who know how to, manage the plumbing and shit, electricians, etc., etc. These are just some examples. Most people cannot do these things. They cannot even, I don't know, build an IKEA shelf, right? So if you wanna be the one to set the price, then you should have a skill set that people rely on. Okay, that's how you can make some money or start your own business, whatever. You need to have something that people cannot go without, whatever that is. That is how you become, you know, uh, you don't become obsolete, right? So that's about it, right? Being a hard worker just because is not viable in the long run. It's a good trait to have. It's a good thing to help people sometimes, but I would suggest that young people should be taught to be hard workers for themselves, for their own goals and interests, no matter how selfish it may be. Okay? Because this is what might happen. Someday, when you're older, you're gonna wake up and you're gonna find yourself with this question. You're gonna ask yourself, after 40 years of just being diligent at a dead-end job, you have nothing to show for it. And you're afraid because you're gonna retire soon and your pension will be minuscule, right? Right? And you're gonna be afraid. You're gonna wonder, what happened? Where did the time go? And why don't you have something to show for it, even if you were the hardest worker around, the best of the best? This is what might happen. And this is what happens to a lot of people. They settle for what is comfortable, what is convenient. They settle for the easiest choice, the easiest, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's what they settle for is one step above bankruptcy, minimum wage, the minimum wage pension or whatever, right? I mean, it's just a sad state, right? We should do better. There's nothing worse than young people wasting their time, their potential on nothing, because it is expected of them to be hard workers, where, yes, they should be hard workers, but then again, it is expected of their employers to reward this hardworking, diligent, effort. But that's just me, okay? So, if you want to support your boy, I got a few books on Amazon. The link will be down below. Thanks for watching. See ya.